Look, you did everything right, didn't you? You went to school, you got the degree, you landed the respectable job, and you finally hit what you always thought was the ultimate financial milestone. But instead of feeling financially free, you feel like you're running on a treadmill that just keeps speeding up. The finish line hasn't just moved, it feels like it's been completely erased. If you're feeling this visceral pain right now, I really need you to know it isn't in your head and you are not failing.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're zooming out to objectively decode the exact systemic shifts that have completely dismantled the traditional middle-class dream. We're going to map out the data to understand why the old rules just do not apply anymore. And more importantly, we're going to reveal the new rules of what the sources call the leverage economy.
Act 1. The illusion. Let's just dive right into the cold, clinical math of the modern American salary so we can really understand the core of the problem.
For decades, this was it. $100,000, the ultimate finish line. It was the hero number. If you hit this, you're pretty much guaranteed a 4-bedroom house, 2 shiny cars in the driveway, and a perfectly secure retirement account that just grew while you slept. It was the unquestioned baseline for a highly comfortable life.
But flash forward to our current era. When we project out to 2026, compounding inflation on absolute essentials means that a 6-figure salary now only has the real purchasing power of 60 grand. The dollar amount on your paycheck hasn't changed, but what it could actually acquire in the real economy has absolutely plummeted. The math is simply broken.
The contrast here is actually stunning. To afford the exact same middle-class lifestyle from 1995, the same house, the same car, the same groceries, you don't need $100,000 today. You actually need a household income of over $220,000. That's the new baseline just to experience the standard of living your parents had.
And here's why. While wages may be inched up over the years, the foundational pillars of human dignity, the core costs of living, absolutely exploded. We're talking about housing jumping roughly 700 to 900%, and the cost of college soaring by 400%. The government might tell us inflation is cooling because, say, flat-screen TVs are cheaper, but you don't live inside a TV. The big three, housing, healthcare, and education, have essentially turned into luxury items.
Act 2. The machine. To understand this massive wealth transfer, we really need to impartially peel back the layers of the macroeconomic machine.
Because this decay didn't just happen by accident. It reads like a dramatic script of a decades-long transition. We moved from a labor-backed economy in the post-war 1950s to a highly financialized system. A massive catalyst highlighted by our sources was 1971, known as the Nixon shock, which severed the US dollar's last link to physical gold. The sources argue this paved the way for infinite money printing, which systematically devalued the purchasing power of every single dollar the middle class managed to save. Now look at the exact moment the promise broke, widely known as the Great Decoupling. Notice this stark divergence since 1979. American worker productivity skyrocketed by 65%, but the compensation for the actual people creating that value, it rose a mere 18%. That massive gap represents 50 years of wealth that American workers created but never ever saw in their paychecks.
So where did all that money go? Well, according to the sources, it flowed directly into Wall Street and institutional investors. And the mindset of these institutions is captured perfectly in this quote from a corporate landlord executive. They aren't looking at providing shelter for families. They view housing purely as a calculated, aggressive financial equation. You are now actively competing with Wall Street cash just to buy a starter home.
Driven by this massive influx of institutional cash, private equity firms are actually projected to control 40% of the entire U.S. single-family rental market by 2030. They can pay in all cash, and they close in days. They're systematically buying up the exact homes that used to be the first step for everyday families to build wealth, and they're transforming them into highly leveraged assets in a giant national rental portfolio. Meanwhile, the banking system is just sitting there, capturing the spread. Under fractional reserve banking, institutions pay you a tiny, maybe 5% on your hard-earned deposits, but simultaneously charge 20% or more on credit cards to people who are just borrowing to survive the rising cost of living. The sources argue that your liquidity is being systematically redirected to service institutional debt.
Act 3. The trap. What's absolutely fascinating here is how our own well-intentioned, slightly outdated habits play right into the hands of this exact system. We've all been taught that cash is king and investing is risky, right? But leaving $50,000 in a standard bank account literally loses you around $7,000 in purchasing power over just 5 years due to inflation. You don't lose the money on paper, sure,
But inflation quietly eats what you can actually afford to buy. Over the long term, leaving cash in the bank is the real risk, whereas strategic investing protects and grows your capital.
We're also totally obsessed with chasing vanity metrics, like just getting a higher salary. But the crucial point here is tracking your wealth velocity. This is simply your income minus your fixed costs. If you earn $10,000 a month but you spend $9,000, your wealth velocity is $1,000. Someone earning $5,000 but spending $4,000 has the exact same financial ammunition as you. It's really not about what you make, it's about what you keep.
Plus, you've probably been told your entire life that your home is your biggest investment. But listen, a true asset puts cash in your pocket every month. Your primary residence takes money out. The mortgage, the maintenance, the taxes. Treating it as your primary investment strategy leaves you asset-rich but cash-poor. It is a very comfortable, wonderful lifestyle choice, but financially speaking, it acts as a liability.
And you know, when we do get ahead, it's so easy to fall into lifestyle inflation. But there's a massive difference between spending that signals value and spending that builds value. Buying a flashy watch or leasing a luxury car just signals success to others. But spending that same money on a business course, a coach, or a new high-income skill, that actually builds your intrinsic value. One makes you poor, the other makes you fundamentally more valuable.
Act 4. The exit. Okay, so how do we escape this financial matrix? How do we stop playing an economic game that the sources argue is structurally rigged from the start?
It starts with a fundamental mindset shift. The old world, that was a labor economy. It rewarded physical labor, working harder, and trading your hours for dollars. But the new world is a leverage economy. It exclusively rewards assets, ownership, and the ability to totally decouple your time from your income. In this new world, the hero isn't the hardest worker. The hero is the smart builder.
Let's fast forward to 2026 and see how this builds. Artificial intelligence now literally allows a single person to command a digital army. You can deploy a market arbitrage agent to execute global trades, a content synthesizer to manage your media, a code architect to build software in plain English, an alpha researcher to filter complex financial data, and an automated closer to handle your sales 24/7. You can orchestrate wealth globally around the clock without a single physical employee.
Which brings us to the modern divide. You see, you aren't competing to be the best doer in the room anymore. The wealth gap today is defined by those who give the instructions, the prompters and orchestrators, and those who simply follow orders. Your goal is to spend 20% of your time learning orchestration tools and 80% identifying high-value problems to actually solve.
So, it's time to abandon the illusion of the traditional middle class. The sources urge us to build what they call the global class. This means creating automated, highly resilient income streams that function completely independently of your physical presence. It means being untied to one local economy, unafraid of technological shifts, and absolutely unstoppable in your ability to generate leverage.
I'm going to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to analyze your own financial footprint. Look at your cash flow, look at your daily habits, and ask yourself honestly, whose system are you really working for? Are you building your own equity, or are you trapped servicing corporate debt? The middle class as we knew it might be gone for sure, but the window to build your own digital leverage is wide open. So what are you going to build tomorrow?